Do your player characters tend to stand in one place when they fight? Do you want some cool ways to get them to move? That's our topic for today, and we're starting right now. If this is your first visit and you want tips and tricks to make your role-playing games a little bit more awesome, start now by subscribing and hitting the bell so you can stay in the know. When I started DMing way back in the dark ages of 2nd edition, I didn't know how to design good fights. Pick some monsters, choose a battlefield, and away we go, right? The result? A lot of times the player character stood in one place until each bad was killed one at a time. Much later, we would refer to this maneuver pejoratively as a tank and spank. As GMs and DMs, we want combat to be exciting and dynamic, especially since so many games revolve around it. So why is it that so many of the fights we find in tabletop role-playing games are anything but? If any of this sounds familiar, this video is for you. Today, we're talking about 3 ways to get your player characters to move, and we'll do this by designing 3 system-neutral fights that you can drop into your home games. What are your favorite tips to get your players to move? We would love to read your ideas down in the comments below. But now, let's get started. The floor is lava! Not standing in the lava is a staple of online games, and I see no reason why we shouldn't use it too. We define a hotspot as an area that a player character should avoid because it'll do a bunch of damage or debuff them or generally something they don't want. Arrange them in interesting patterns for fun and awesome. When it comes to the type of hotspot, the sky is the limit. Lava is an obvious choice, but so are pools of acid, spike traps, and lightning bolt targets. Hindering terrain and anti-magic areas are also useful. I am especially fond of showing special tiles on the map. If your crafting game is strong, this is especially good. Most players will guess that there's something fishy going on once they see the map. These kinds of movement puzzles are often easily grasped. They won't know what it is yet, but they'll usually get it by the second iteration. So let's crank it up a notch to make it even more awesome. Blam! On this map, we have 2 types of traps. The dark tile shoots spears from the ground, dealing melee damage at the end of every other turn. Player characters making a saving throw can reduce their damage by half. Every 3rd turn, the same tiles are struck by lightning, offering the same damage reduction. Player characters standing in the wrong place at the wrong time get zapped or stabbed at regular intervals. Players not paying attention to their surroundings are likely to meet an untimely end, and impending death is an awfully good motivator. Granted, in this example, it is both predictable and easily countered. Want to crank it up another notch? Let's make the spears hit the light tiles instead of the dark ones. This is simple enough to get it right at the table, and it covers the entire floor, so that your player characters will have to be very careful with their movement. Even this should be pretty easy for your players to sort out, and that's no fun really, so let's add some bad guys. The bads in this encounter are played by rock elementals. They are both immune to stabbing and immune to lightning, making them perfect for this encounter. They can also grapple player characters to hold them on the square, preventing them from dodging. You could also give them a pushback to increase the danger, but that's the next section. Stand your ground! If you can't convince your players to move through the mechanics of the encounter, you can also rely on pushbacks to knock them off their blocks. We define a pushback as any ability that moves a character 1 or more tiles involuntarily. It could be a gust of wind, a pitching pirate ship, or a mob pushing the characters around. My game is designed with pushbacks as a feature of many melee actions. Positioning in combat is a key component of my design, but 5th edition has this too in the Battlemaster's pushing attack and the more generic shove attacks. You can encourage problem solving by having the environmental effects work on the bads too. This rewards players for digging deeper into their bag of tricks. Pushbacks are good for moving specific characters around, like tanks, so that the bads can get at all the squishies in the back. This is especially useful if the PCs have carefully set up their blocks, are guarding an objective, or hold a strategic area like a choke point. Pop quiz. What is a good, fast creature that can feasibly push other characters around? There are lots of options available, but I like Minotaurs, and not just because I have this sweet mini. He'll get painted someday, Shu. Minotaurs move fast, so let's imagine they have a 2-part charging attack. We imagine this is a long charge, throwing PCs around like ragdolls. Part 1 is the actual attack, moving several tiles in a straight line and goring the target, dealing high damage if it connects. If it does connect, we allow a saving throw to avoid being pushed back many more tiles. For Part 2, any PC within 1 tile of the Minotaur's path is pushed perpendicularly away if they miss their saving throw. While the Minotaur pushbacks are awesome, they are not really all that dangerous, so let's imagine a battlefield like this. Blam! The area is pretty open, except for these puddles of acid. Any character traversing an acid tile gets burned, and now the Minotaurs have something to work toward. What would make this encounter even better? How about 2 Minotaurs? Now we're getting somewhere. Players are encouraged to move very carefully, breaking up their formation but not standing too close to the acid. As an added bonus, they can line up so that the Minotaurs charge through the pools themselves. Don't be afraid to reward player cleverness. The goal of the Minotaurs is to pick the PC in range that maximizes the number of other characters being burned by acid. Because the Minotaurs will be moving around dynamically, they force the player characters to do the same. It is easy to imagine this as a terrifically chaotic encounter full of very angry, very raw beef, with the PCs running for their very lives.
How do we get out of here?
For our last trick, let's imagine a magical field in a room. The room coruscates with arcane energy. As long as the player characters stay within a tight cluster, there is no real effect. But if any character is more than 2 tiles away from the nearest party member, an arcane bolt strikes them. It starts from the nearest party member and deals damage based on the distance between them. Pop quiz. What's the best thing to do when the bads are throwing fireballs? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Here's the playfield. Blam. It's big enough to cause real damage if characters are at opposite ends. The boss sits way up here at the far end on this dais, and to make things a little bit more interesting, these pillars block line of sight. This gives your players an interesting choice. Hide behind the pillars to block line of sight of the bolt, or try to move to a safer position. Since the boss created the field, they are quite naturally immune to its effects, and because they're the boss, they can throw the fireballs themselves. You can either throw fireballs on a 1d4 timer, or when the boss can hit a certain number of the player characters with one. Let the players figure out the field before the fight, or not if you want to make it that much more fun. If you're using a timer, roll your 1d4 at the beginning of the fight, right after the villain's soliloquy. When the timer goes off, hit them with the fireball and roll the d4 again. They'll figure it out. The puzzle is that the players have to stay close enough together to not take damage from the bolt, but also need to spread out when the fireball is launched at them. The field damage is applied at the end of the round, based on current positioning. You can make it even more dangerous by knocking characters around when not throwing fireballs, or give the boss some minions with pushbacks. I hope something in here can help your fights be a little bit more dynamic. Don't let your players fall into a rhythm of boredom. Make them move carefully and think tactically. If you like this discussion, please share it with someone you think it might help. And if you use these encounters in your home games, please drop us a line and let us know how it went. Thanks for staying classy, and I'll see you on Sunday.